Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and the next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of the PR from the Heart Children's Book Spotlight Series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 157. That is the 157th trolley stop here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series as we are proudly beginning our month-long celebration. That is the 4-year anniversary of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. So we hope that all of you, our listeners and viewers, our fellow friends, neighbors, and of course, our shining stars have been enjoying the back-to-school season. My name is John Massalonis, the manager here at PR from the Heart. I'm really excited about the course of these next several programs that we're going to be sharing with you throughout the month of September, not only because it's the 4-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, but during this particular point in time of the year especially, we highlight some of the most anticipated children's books and middle grade books that truly need to be shared during the back-to-school season. And today, we're going to be talking about the Holocaust. And that's obviously a very sensitive subject. I remember first seeing the Academy Award-winning film Schindler's List, directed by Steven Spielberg back in 1993. And that, of course, chronicled the story of Oskar Schindler, who did his part to be able to save as many Jewish people as he could during the time of World War II. And hearing the music of Itzhak Perlman playing the violin, it brought back some very fond yet very stoic memories of myself as a 12-year-old on my end of things. And one of the great things about children's books and middle grade books especially is that when you have authors who are doing their part to talk about very sensitive subjects, a lot of the times these books are great conversation starters as well, because one of the things I remember watching Steven Spielberg's Academy Award-winning speech, he had mentioned that for all of the remaining people who had survived the Holocaust, he had a message when he accepted his Academy Award to teachers and educators across the country to continue to keep this story alive. Well, we are honored here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series to be able to keep the memory and the legacy alive of a very special soul by the name of Eva and her sister. And we are proud to be able to share as part of episode number 157 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Little Brown Books for Young Readers, I Will Protect You, a true story of twins who survived Auschwitz, which talks about the life story of Eva Mozes Kor. Joining us is our featured guest here on episode number 157 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. You, of course, can head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can purchase your copy of I Will Protect You, a true story of twins who survived Auschwitz. If you feel guided to do so, you can leave a 5-star review, as it's one of the many ways you can pledge your support for our featured guest here. Joining us as the trolley travels all the way from San Diego, all the way to the beautiful state of Michigan, Danica Davidson, joining us to talk about this very special message, this very special story, and this very special woman, this very special soul, Eva Mozes Kor. Danica, we appreciate your free time in joining us and helping us to kick off the 4-year anniversary celebration of the program. Thank you so much for joining us here this week.
Thank you for having me and the opportunity to talk about Eva's in my book.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And of course, if you are new to the Children's Book Spotlight Series, there are people who are still learning about us even 4 years after we began this beautiful magic carpet ride. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support, if this message is already inspiring you, if it feels that it needs to be shared with someone in need, if you want to do your part to be able to keep Eva's memory alive and the memory of those that were lost during the Holocaust, we encourage you to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and to share this very special trolley stop that, once again, is episode number 157 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Danica, this isn't the traditional children's book, middle grade book. It has a very important message and a very sensitive theme, so to speak, with the Holocaust. It takes a very brave person and a very brave soul, and you said yes to this project, and not only working with yourself, but working alongside Eva, who had actually passed just a couple of years ago Before we dive into the pages of the book and we share Eva's story, can you let us know when this project first came on your lap? We always like to do a little bit of a Wayback Machine to start off each children's book spotlight series, to be able to share the origin story of when the children's middle book actually came to be. So we obviously are familiar with the Holocaust, but obviously that happened many years ago. You're doing your part to keep this important message alive in your own way by sharing Eva's story. So could you let us know when you were approached to be able to share Eva's story and the message of the Holocaust, and really what were some of your early impressions that you got after receiving this opportunity?
Well, I met Eva when she gave a speech at Western Michigan University, which is about an hour from where I live. And I'd been experiencing increased anti-Semitism in my life, mainly at work as a journalist. Because in addition to being an author, I have worked and continue to work as a journalist. And it just kind of blew my mind how much anti-Semitism was growing, but a lot of people weren't aware of it. The Jewish community is aware of it, but it's not getting a lot of media attention. A lot of people aren't realizing that it's really spiking lately. And one of the things about anti-Semitism is that it comes from all different areas. You can't just say, well, one group is doing it. It is so old, which our book goes into, and just so entrenched in some people's minds, it can be hard to break free of it. So after experiencing this, I felt that I needed to write something that could be helpful. I just felt the need to do something, and it was a question of, well, what do I do? I published middle grade books before then. I wasn't actually thinking about doing a Holocaust middle grade book. I was just starting by researching, by reading a lot more Jewish books, Jewish history, Jewish culture, learning more about my own family, learning more about my heritage. And I was going to see Jewish speakers, and one of them was Eva. And I showed up there to listen to her because I had never met someone who had survived Auschwitz as a child. That is so extremely rare. I've met Auschwitz survivors, I've met child survivors, but they survive by hiding or escaping, which is usually what kids' books of the Holocaust are about, are the hiding or escaping stories, which can give the idea that most Jews hid or escaped, but that's just not true. So I went there to talk to her afterward, hoping I could interview her for a magazine, and mentioned that I had written kids' books, and just kind of to let her know, I'm not wasting your time. People will read this. I can interview you. And as soon as I said I wrote kids' books, she lit up. And she said, I want to do a kids' book. I mean, she's this frail woman, octogenarian, needs help getting around. It felt like she almost jumped out of her seat, like, I want to do a kids' book. She was very feisty. And she said that she wanted to do a kids' book because we need to reach the kids to talk about anti-Semitism. And she said that in schools, usually when kids learn about the Holocaust, it's at age 12 or older. And she said that's too late because the prejudices are already formed. And I've seen what she's talked about. I've seen people who have read Holocaust books at an older age, and they might say, oh, well, that's terrible. But then when anti-Semitism or other forms of prejudice happen now, they don't make the connection. So we started talking right away about how to do this, and it was something unlike anything I'd ever written before. But when I saw this opportunity, I can't turn it down, because she said you have to reach kids, but she was elementary school age when she survived Auschwitz. And I think that's what makes this book work, because if you do an adult surviving Auschwitz and write that for a kid, what are they going to relate to? But since Eva was a kid herself and dealing with other kid issues of feeling bullied at school, of feeling like her dad didn't like her as much as he liked her sisters, feeling left out when parents wouldn't tell her what was going on, these are all really relatable things, and that led to a voice I could use to write her story.
I really appreciate you communicating this because, during the early part of the book when I was reading, you could literally connect with the emotions and feelings of what Eva was feeling. Back in that particular time frame, not only obviously was Eva a child, she was, growing to become a woman, but she was also Jewish. So it's kind of like at the time she had those strikes that were against her, so to speak, versus obviously today, women are taken more seriously and Jewish people are taken seriously. Thankfully, there's unfortunately some of those prejudices are still in place, but they're not as thick as what they were beforehand. But even when she was trying to communicate with her father about the experience where her and her sister had to knead on the corn, it was just this matter of, pray to God, this too shall pass kind of thing. And you could tell that even at a very early age, she wasn't taken seriously in the way in which she wanted to, that she felt misunderstood. And obviously, even if, children are going through something now, it might not necessarily be the Holocaust, but even if it's something as simple as being bullied, they can relate to her experience. Obviously, whenever we do something for the first time, or whether we dive into a new project for the first time, we can experience some challenges, difficulties, obstacles, problems, stressors, troubles, worries. Again, this isn't the traditional children's book. It's not the traditional middle grade book. Working with Eva early on, when this project was greenlit, you started working on it. What were some of the initial early challenges that you experienced early on, and what were some of the things that helped you to feel that you were able to get through to the other side of those?
So it just started with me interviewing Eva to get to know her better, to get to know more about her life, and also discussing with her how kids' books handle difficult subjects, because any subject can be taught to kids. It's just a matter of how you talk about it. There are some very serious kid books about, for example, protecting you from being raped. They teach kids about that. They teach it with good touch, bad touch. So it's the language you use, it's how you present it. So I was reading a lot of books, sampling a lot of books that dealt with those serious subjects to see how do they do this. And there is nothing else like I Will Protect You out in the market for that age range. And we really meant for this book to fill a gap in Holocaust education. There have been some disturbing studies recently about how many people aren't aware of what Auschwitz was. I think it might have been 2/3 of millennials or something. And I'm a millennial. I've known what it was since very early childhood. And the thing that she said of reaching kids at a young age made a lot of sense to me. I knew about the Holocaust since a young age, and I think it made me more of a critical thinker, and I think it made me more empathetic. All these things. I pretty much can't remember a time where I didn't have some idea of the Holocaust. So we were going back and forth a lot, discussing things, looking at books. I was doing research online. I was discovering some people who I disagree with, who are completely against kids learning about the Holocaust because it will upset them. It's like, well, I would hope it would upset them to understand these things happening. That shows empathy. And I was researching that and thinking like, well, if I write this book, it looks like some people are going to come after me of, how dare you make kids uncomfortable to learn about this subject. And I'm not someone who writes things for shock value, but I write something if I think it's important to say. But I was talking with a person who's important to me one day at a restaurant about these people who don't want kids to learn about this and the up and book banning. And all of a sudden the TV at the restaurant we were in broke off whatever program it was to breaking news of a Pittsburgh synagogue being shot up. It was movie timing. It was unbelievable. And I looked at that, I looked at him, and I just said, I have to write this book. I have to write this book no matter what, because I don't want this stuff to keep happening.
And I really commend you for moving forth on that. I do remember when the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting happened, because I believe that was actually in the neighborhood of one of my favorite beloved neighbors, Mr. Rogers. And so that also put an even greater spotlight on things as well too, because what we can only do our part to be able to change the world. We're not just by doing what it is that you're doing and putting this book out there, it's making a great difference. And you don't necessarily know what impact that you're going to make unless you actually make it. One of the things is that Eva's story, along with her twin sister Miriam, it wasn't just the traditional the traditional experience of growing up during the Holocaust. They had experienced Nazi experimentation. So this is something to be able to kind of give a little bit of a greater backdrop of what, for those of our listeners and viewers who are just learning about Eva's story and her sister's story, and they haven't even necessarily read the book. Could you share this just a little bit about some of the things that Eva and her sister went through as children, so that we really have a greater idea of what they were actually experiencing at a very early age when this horrific continuing tragedy was occurring?
So normally when people would arrive at Auschwitz, anyone who was a child would have been sent directly to the gas chambers. Auschwitz was a death camp. The only point of keeping people alive there was to work them until they were no longer able to work, and then they died. I mean, that is the brutal truth of it. The only reason Eva survived, wasn't sent immediately to the gas chambers, was because she was a twin. And there was a Nazi doctor there, this Dr. Mengele, who since has been called the Angel of Death, who experimented on twins. Now, this was something that existed before, this knowledge that twins are very similar, so you can use one in a you can use them both in a science experiment to kind of see what can be done. You put a disease in one twin and you see how that twin reacts compared to the other twin. It doesn't have anything done to them. But the difference is, before Dr. Mengele, there had to be consent. He had total power here. So he took any twins he could get. He preferred identical twins, but he would take fraternal twins as well. And he would do these different experiments. And the book does not go into the most gruesome reports of the experiments, because there's some pretty horrific stuff you can read out there. All the stuff here is stuff Eva saw or heard. The main thing with her is he stuck some disease in her that he thought, well, it was going to kill her, and she refused to die. And if you read the book, you see how she fought to stay alive and fought for her sister and pulled through and then saved her sister afterward. And I think this book is just an excellent way of showing kids what other kids can do at any age. You can do amazing things.
And that's something that's a message that kids really need continuous reinforcement on. Again, thankfully we're in a time frame where we're not moving through things to the degree that we did during Auschwitz and during the Holocaust. But there, kids have still, even just alone from the pandemic, kids had their own fears and anxieties and insecurities leading into the pandemic. And then it's kind of like the pandemic happens and the rug gets pulled out from under the kids, where here they are, they're not able to be with their friends, they're not able to be with their teachers, they're not able to socialize, they're not able to go outside. So kids are still moving through their own, and even just kids' minds are very impressionable. Kids were learning about survival at that particular point in time. So, there were some similar threads between the pandemic and Auschwitz and the Holocaust as well, too. Again, we appreciate all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow Shining Stars joining us as we kick off our month-long celebration of PR from the Heart's 4-year anniversary celebration, the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We are diving into the pages of the brand new middle grade book, co-authored by Danica Davidson with Eva Mozes Kor, I Will Protect You, a true story of twins who survived Auschwitz. We encourage you to head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. You can leave a 5-star review for I Will Protect You. That's one of the many ways you can pledge your support and let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's and middle grade books, as well as to be able to honor the memory of Eva as well too. When you interviewed Eva, when you were in the process of writing this book, what were some of the things, because again, like when we watched Schindler's List back in 1993, they really, Steven Spielberg and his team did their part to be able to keep things as accurate as possible. Sometimes when you have Hollywood movies, they Hollywoodize them, so to speak. So what were some of the things that you learned specifically about Eva and her sister that maybe you're like, wow, you kind of took a little bit of a second glance at, or even just things that you learned in general about Auschwitz and the Holocaust? What were some of those things that you had learned along the way?
Well, there's only one thing Eva told me that really shocked me, because I've read a lot of Holocaust books. I've known about the Holocaust since I was young. But she told me about teenage girls getting crushes on Dr. Mengele. I mean, these were the twins he was experimenting on. I was pretty shocked by that, but it goes to show what people need to do to cope. And the horrible situation they're in, I think it probably would have been some sort of a form of denial of he's not as bad as well, he was. But I do remember her telling me that, and I was just kind of taken aback. What, really? And I asked, did you feel that way about him? And got a very loud no from her. Just no. Okay. Like, I wouldn't have judged you if you'd said yes. You have to do what you have to do to survive in these situations. I mean, Auschwitz is just such an extreme situation. It really frustrates me when I hear people make comparisons to the Holocaust of something they don't like. Oh, this is just like Auschwitz. This is just like the Holocaust. And that's part of why this book had to be written, so people can accurately know what happened there. But I had been doing a lot of reading on Jewish books before that, included Holocaust. So I had been researching that on my own. And after the book was written, in the early drafts, I took it to Michael Berenbaum, who's considered the world's premier Holocaust scholar. And I wanted to get his thoughts on it, because I also know that memory is not perfect. And I know I'm not a scholar of the Holocaust. I've read a lot on it, but I could be missing context for things. So I did have him check the facts. He had a few tweaks for it, but overall, he didn't have a whole lot to say, and he endorsed the book, which is a really great honor.
In moving through the rest of the book, one of the things that you can also connect with is the courage that Eva had and how she was able to begin to connect with the message of forgiveness. Now, again, if you go through some sort of a heinous atrocity, whether it be if you are, even if it's as simple as being bullied, or if you are raped, or you have someone in your family that's murdered, it can be very difficult if you're maneuvering through the emotions of it to say, yeah, I'm going to forgive this person, kind of things. The message of courage and forgiveness and the capacity to give, when we can connect to courage and when we can do our part to be able to at least open up our heart to forgiveness, that's actually when healing happens. Could you share with us a little bit about when you were speaking with Eva, and as the process of the book actually came to be, specifically keying on those messages? What were the things that Eva wanted us to be able to know about courage and about forgiveness?
The forgiveness thing was something that she had a very unique thoughts on. She said that for her, forgiveness meant healing. And we make it very clear in this book, forgiveness does not mean pardoning. We are not pardoning Nazis, because there has been some controversy where people seem to think that's what the book says, but you've read it, you know it doesn't say that. It says that for her, forgiveness is simply not hating a person. And she said, when you hate a person, you're poisoning yourself and you're not hurting that other person at all. She also talked about how it took decades to get to that place. She was a very angry woman for many years, as you would imagine, after what she went through. And it was actually forgiveness that was healing for her. And I think that shows that healing can take many forms. And we say in the book that we hope all survivors find healing in whatever form feels right for them. And she acknowledged to me that if someone had come up to her before she was ready and said, well, you ought to forgive them, it wouldn't have worked for her. She wasn't ready to. It has to be the individual's choice to forgive or not to forgive. But she found that it took away her anger and it made her feel like a person again. It's not like it made life perfect or anything, but it made life instead of just constant anger and rage. And so she thought that was a really good thing that could benefit a lot of people. She talked about it a lot. And it really reminds me of some philosophical things I've read, where it says, if a person can make you angry, that person becomes your master, because they have control over your mind. And that's what Eva's point was. When she forgave, they no longer had control over her mind. She was a free woman. They couldn't hold her down anymore. And that's what she worked for her, what's worked for her and what she embraced.
When you first met Eva through the process, when you knew you were going to be working on this book, and obviously she had passed away in 2019, so she's still with us in the spiritual context, so to speak. You know, we can definitely feel her heart. in And I Will Protect You, a lot of the times throughout life, when we do something such as writing a book, something along the lines of that, we can experience our own healing. It's almost a cathartic effect, so to speak. Did you feel in the time that you met Eva, did you feel that when she knew that this was going to be a reality, I Will Protect You, do you feel that she experienced a deeper level of healing even beyond the fact that she was experiencing some kind of a cathartic effect?
I think so. She was just absolutely obsessed with the idea of reaching kids. She talked about it to me all the time, of how you have to reach kids in an age accessible way. And she also looked me dead in the eye one day and said, don't sugarcoat it. So I had to find a balance of telling the truth but not making it graphic. But she talked about being a kid and how she knew something was wrong. The stuff she was hearing on the radio, the way adults were talking, something was up. And she would ask her parents, and they would just kind of shoo her away like, oh, you're a kid, you don't need to know this, you don't need to understand any of this. And she knew, and I know how much that just isn't really fair to kids. The kids are really smart. They can grasp a lot of different things, and sometimes life forces them to have to grasp things, like it did for Eva. And I'd rather them learn about it through a book and prevent it from happening again than go through something like this.
Agreed.
And yeah, she was so happy when we knew that Little Brown was going to publish this book. Because I called her up with the news and she was just beaming in her voice. And then she looked up Little Brown and then she was beaming more. So happy about it.
That's I can just envision what that experience may have been, because here's this woman who went through some of the worst atrocities in the history of mankind. And she gets to a point where she knows that her message is going to be shared in a book that's with one of the largest publishing companies in the world, and that's going to be reaching many, not only children now, but future generations of children. And I can only just imagine is that, you know, obviously it doesn't exchange or trade in the experience of what it is that she moved through. But I can only imagine that she knew that this book would really make a difference, knowing the fact that obviously Eva's no longer with us and she's been passed away for 3 years. You're talking about this book right now. How much does this mean to you now, knowing the fact that this is getting out there, that this is being shared? It really is a very special gift when you honor someone's memory, when you share their life story. Could you take us through like your own emotions that you're experiencing right now, looking back 3 years, she's passed away, but the fact that people are caring about the story, people are talking about the story, people are sharing the story. What does this mean to you, not even just on a professional level, but on, you know, an earthly related soul level on your end of things?
Working on this book has been very emotional. For some reason, I wasn't prepared for that. But it was emotional hearing Eva tell these stories. It was emotional to write. It was emotional to lose her because, you know, I met her in the fall and I interviewed her for months. I started writing the book. I actually wrote the rough draft in December of that year. We did the revisions and then it got sent off to my agent in March. Little Brown made an offer in June and then she passed away in July, and it was that fast. And I am so relieved I got it written in time because the finished manuscript was sent to Little Brown. Eva approved of this manuscript because I would send her chapters as I wrote them to get her thoughts, and she only ever wanted little tweaks to it. She was really happy with how I was writing it. And then it's been a long time of before getting the book out, and it is so good to have it out. It is very emotional for me, and I'm so grateful for you and people like you who are helping me spread the word on this book, because I do believe that a book like this can change people's lives. I do think this is a great book for parents to read together with their kids or teachers to read with their classrooms.
I'm really glad that you're sharing this, especially honoring Eva's memory. I feel that I always go back to when Mr. Rogers spoke with Senator John Pastore on Capitol Hill when he was trying to get $20 million worth of funding for PBS. And when he was speaking with Senator John Pastore, he said, My program is a resource of care. And I take the term of resource of care, and that's what children's and middle grade books are, especially because you never know what a child is going through. You know, whether it be if their parents are going through a divorce, if they feel unloved, that no one cares for them, if they're just moving through a little bit of a bad day. And there's something that is there inside of each children's book, inside of each middle grade book. And especially again, for little ones who are moving through some kind of cruelty. Again, it could be just, you know, as bullying, it could be something much, much, much worse. If you remember several years ago, we were experiencing, a lot of hate crimes. A couple of summers ago with African Americans, and just it was a very it's been a very sensitive time in our history, so to speak. So I feel that again, by sharing this message, I really also give you a lot of courage. Like I can really see how you didn't try to sugarcoat this, and in many respects, like children's books and middle grade books, I always kind of use the term rainbows and gumdrops. Right. When you think of a children's book, it's like, oh, this is going to be, la la la. It's going to be all uppity kind of energy and whatnot. And this is something where, it obviously has to be shared, and you can't sugarcoat the experience of Auschwitz and the Holocaust. It was something that really happened. Could you share with us some of the feedback that you've received from kids, from parents, from educators? Because, I can only imagine, again, you've got a lot of parents that are out there that, want to be able to do their part to educate their children, but not scare them at the same point in time. And again, like this goes back to brave little old me when I was 12 years old, and I'm like, Mom and Dad, I want to go see, Schindler's List with you, not knowing like the violence that I would be seeing as a 12-year-old in the film. Could you share with us not only maybe like if there were any it's not any hesitations that you had experienced, but if you did, feel free to share those along with some of the feedback that you have heard from kids, from parents, from educators, where that this book is truly making a difference right now. And
I'm thankfully getting a lot of good feedback, which feels really good. And I hear from kids and adults. I hear from adults who say they learn about the Holocaust from this and are grateful for it. And I do think of this as a book that is middle grade, because that's what we're aiming for. People older than that can read it too and can learn from it. Adults shouldn't feel ashamed reading a book like this. It's educational. Even people I know who know about the Holocaust have remarked that they learned details in this book. And I wanted to make sure to include stuff on the history of anti-Semitism and more context for how World War II came to be, because these things don't come out of nowhere. And I thought that was very important. And I'm also not aware of any other middle grade books that discuss those things, that give that greater context and also have a personal story. So, I mean, for hesitations, I told you about the bit of hesitation I had, and then there was the news with the Pittsburgh shooting, and all hesitations just went out the window. I have to do this. And no one else is going to do it. I'm going to have to do this.
And the important thing is that you followed your heart, because you could have easily been, when those shootings happened at the synagogue in Pittsburgh, you could have said, I mean, I'm just little old me. This book isn't really going to make a difference. And if anything, you really connected to that courage inside of you and said, no, like this is just one of another many reasons why this book needs to be able to get out there. We're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest here on episode number 157 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, children's and middle grade author Danica Davidson here again. This is episode number 157 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We're, of course, sharing the true story of Eva Mozes Kor and her twin sister, I Will Protect You, a true story of twins who survived Auschwitz. We encourage you to head on over to Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. Or, of course, you can head over to your local children's or independent bookstore and to be able to pledge your support in that fashion as well. If Amazon is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing, you can, of course, leave a 5-star review. That's one of the many ways, again, you can pledge your support for Danica and to be able to let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books, and of course, and most importantly, honoring the memory of Eva and her sister and all of the lives of those that were lost during the Holocaust. In terms of the takeaways, going to the conclusion of the book, reading the last brief paragraph, it says, "Mama's embroidery was right. Your mind is like a garden. Plant flowers so weeds can't grow. I am planting flowers and brushing away the weeds. I'm calling on the world to join me. If humans do the worst acts, we can also do the best. This world could use a lot more healing." Again, it's very easy to be able to say this is just a story on the Holocaust and kind of pigeonhole this as like a capsule, like a frozen thing in time. This is Eva's story, and how she was able to move through. But this story translates to today because our world is still going through a lot and we are still evolving, we are still growing, we are still learning. Could you talk to us about really what Eva was communicating here, the importance of not even just focusing on the positive in life, but doing your part to be able to really do our part to be able to make a difference, to put more good out there into the world, because it really makes a difference. Could you really speak to the closing words of what Eva was really sharing for us and how important that is at this particular point in time?
Yeah, no, we are unfortunately seeing some real parallels to 1930s. Things aren't as bad as they were then, but with the Ukraine, with stuff going on in China, there are a lot of very concerning things going on. And I do hope that people reading this book, that it helps them to recognize these things. It helps them to recognize propaganda. And I also think that it was very important in writing this kid's book because it's not, rainbows and gumdrops, but it had to end on a happier note. And most kids' books, they're just kids in it. So I think it's unusual because we follow Eva just a little bit for her adulthood. It's mostly her as a kid, but there's a bit explaining what happened later on. And we see her finding purpose in her life and finding healing. And she wanted to teach kids about the Holocaust. She visited schools all the time, but she also wanted them to be happy. And she talked to me once about how it's unhappy people who attack other people. If you're happy, why are you going to go do that? So she really felt that we needed to do, healing for ourselves. And I think it was interesting you talk about translation because it's not that Eva ever said any of those things that you just read specifically, but when she would talk about how she would go to classrooms and finding healing and she just wouldn't stop, I translated that into what you read just there. We were a good match, because she would say what she thought and I would kind of turn it into a literary way of saying it that would be good for kids. She really liked how it came out. But I do think that this book, in addition to teaching the hard stuff, can teach kids the good stuff. When I sign this book now, I like to leave little messages. And I was debating for a long time, how do I sign this book? Because all my books, I have a little something I say with it. And what I finally decided on is signing, "You can do amazing things." To tell kids, to tell anyone you can do amazing things. You can do really good things that are amazing. You can unfortunately do really bad things that are amazing in their own way. But we all have choices, and sometimes things in our lives are completely out of our control. And we can only control our own thoughts and our own actions. And we see how Eva, in such a horrible situation, chose her own thoughts and her own actions the best that she could and how it got her through.
For those children right now who are moving through their own dark cycle, whether it be something that they're moving through in terms of, emotions and feelings, whether it be something such as mom and dad are going through a divorce, maybe if they're going through, unfortunately, something even more challenging than that. We always like to be able to provide support and encouragement to those who tune into the Children's Book Spotlight series, especially the children. But not even just children, but also, us as big kids, we have our inner child that lies within us, so to speak. And one of the many things I feel about children's books and middle grade books is that we as adults can find laughter and joy and even healing especially. What would be some words of encouragement and support that you would like to share for those of our neighbors who are going through some challenging times, whether it be children, whether it be adults right now, so that they know that, you know, if they're moving through something and they still want to achieve something, whether it be, you know, write a children's book, whether it be become a mom or become a father, you talk in the book about the importance of something worth fighting for. And can you really speak to that thread specifically when it comes to the words of encouragement and support that you would like to be able to share for those who are going through challenging times right now?
Now, everyone goes through challenging times sometimes. And I thought it was interesting with Eva is, you know, after surviving Auschwitz, you'd think she'd be dismissive to our day-to-day problems, but she wasn't. She knew suffering was suffering. She was very empathetic. And one of her messages to kids is that whatever is going on, you can get through this. And another thing that she said, interesting, is she said forgiveness comes after it's over. In other words, if someone is hurting you now, you don't just sit there and go, I forgive you. You do something to make it better. You get out of that relationship. You tell a teacher or a parent something is going on. The forgiveness comes after that person is no longer able to hurt you, but it's just the emotions of anger that are sticking there. And I think it's really important to teach kids anti-bullying things, but I also think it's important to teach kids to be strong in the face of adversity, because no matter what, something hard is going to happen to them in their lives. And I've had some really hard years since working on this book, and during those times I will think of Eva. I think if she could survive Auschwitz with that much gumption at that age, you know, I can get through this. And it can be very inspiring to hear stories like hers and know what we are capable of. And to know that we do go through cycles. In the world, things don't seem that great right now. It's been a really hard 2 years, I think, for just about everyone, but we can work together to make it better than it is now.
Agreed. And I feel that, you know, even I know one of the main reasons why 4 years ago I made the decision to start this program is because I really wanted to do my part to make a difference. I feel that when we share our stories, there is a lot of healing, that even just the possibility of healing can happen. Can happen. And when more people share, and just, you know, when episodes of the children's book spotlight series reach far and wide, I know that now looking back 4 years on my life, it's like, wow, like there has been, you know, dozens upon dozens and near now, you know, 200 stories that have been shared that are making a difference in the lives of children and parents and families and educators. And as we like to say here in the program, those who love great children's books. I feel, Danica, that everything in life, life is, a lot of times we can have the misconception, okay, we got grammar school, high school, college, maybe if we get our master's degree, and then we're done with school. But I remember a little over 10 years ago, there's a term that I first picked up on called Earth School. And we learn each and every day in different things that we do, different tasks, commitments, responsibilities. What did this process of communicating with Eva, becoming her friend, helping her with this book, writing this book, now sharing it, what has this process and what has this book taught you about yourself and taught you about life?
I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was to go through this. I've learned some hard lessons about life. I've learned a better idea of things people will go to for power and money. And that's very clear in this book with Mengele, what he would do for power once he was in power. And I'm looking now toward the good things that are in the world and that are in life. And that's what Eva would want too. I mean, I shouldn't speak for Eva. She didn't like it when people spoke for her, but she was always talking about making things better. And she learned lessons that as much cruelty as there is in the world, there's also a lot of decency and a lot of helpful people. And one thing I think could be helpful for kids who might want to help the world more but be overwhelmed by how they can do it, do something in your community. I think if everyone helped out their own community, own problems around them, they wouldn't get so out of hand. And maybe they could do something at their school to bring in, I don't know, spare change to send to kids in Ukraine. They could do something like that, or they could, you know, go help the local animal shelter, play with the animals, help them find homes. There are all sorts of things you can do.
There is. And this goes back to, I always slide in some Mr. Rogers-isms during the Children's Book Spotlight series episodes. I remember when, because shortly after the final episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood aired in 2001, there was and we're obviously now 21 years post 9/11. And he would always share this, I believe it was his mom who first told him this, is that in times of challenge, in times of hurt, in times of strife, always look for the helpers. You will always find people that are helping. And in the midst of that, with what happened during 9/11, you knew that there were people, whether it be, police officers, firefighters, EMTs, just random people on the street that were helping people to get out of harm's way, that there are people out there that care. And I think it's important that we let little ones know, especially right now, we're heading into the back to school season, the final quarter of the year. We let them know that there's always trusted neighbors, there's always trusted adults, that even if you're moving through something challenging, especially if kids are being bullied right now, to let them know that there's always hope, that there's always someone that's out there to be able to care about yourself, and that, yes, that we can plant flowers of love and compassion and understanding and forgiveness, which is great. I got goosebumps talking about this book and this wonderful episode. One of the many ways that we close out our episodes of the Children's Book Spotlight series, we like to give a little tip of the cap to the aforementioned Mr. Rogers, when and he did this in different ways, shapes, and forms, Danica. Most notably when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmy shortly before he passed from stomach cancer. And he always kept the time, whether it be 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. He encouraged us to remember those who helped love us into being. And that was his way of, remembering those earth angels who came across our path when we were going through challenging times, that we can thank those people, whether they're here with us now or whether they're in heaven. There's probably so many people in your life that have helped you in terms of your career as an author, getting this book out there. Who are some of the people that you would like to publicly recognize here on episode number 157 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, as we kick off the 4-year anniversary celebration of the program that helped love you, Danica Davidson, into being?
Well, I have to thank Eva first, because it was her story, and thank her for entrusting it to me. She had been wanting to write a children's book for a while, but apparently she hadn't liked the other writers who tried it, and she liked the way I wrote it, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to my parents. Since a very early age, I knew I wanted to be a writer. And when you tell people that, they might be like, that's not a real job, But my parents always could encourage me to do that. I want to thank my significant other, Taylor Height. He was there with me when I met Eva. Actually, he was also there to see her speech, and he's helped me through getting this book out. And I want to thank Stephen Lowy, who was my attorney. My agent unfortunately passed away during this, and so he's been helping me through this. And I want to thank my editor, Lisa Yoskowitz, for taking this book out and giving it a chance. Because we were actually getting a lot of rejections from publishers, and they were all saying, we already have a Holocaust book, we don't need another. Which I thought was very strange, because one book can't cover the Holocaust, and this book fills a gap of what isn't out there about it for kids.
And it's also a very personal experience. It's not just the general, here's what happened during Auschwitz, here's what happened during the Holocaust. It gives, a very clear, here's what happened to not only Eva, but also her sister in the process. And one of the things that we also love here at the Children's Book Spotlight series, especially as we now begin the 5th year of the program, I feel that us as human beings, as fellow souls, we have the opportunities to bring to form and shape our wishes, our dreams, our goals, and our heartfelt desires. And we can help our fellow neighbors to do the exact same thing in the process. So one of the things that we always do is a little tip of the cap. One of our favorite movies here at the Children's Book Spotlight series, we go back to 1992, we go back to The Genie of the Lamp, we go back to the late Robin Williams, and we go back, I have two sizes of these. This one is a very teeny tiny size genie lamp, and then just yonder off in the distance, I do have a bigger size version of this. So we have a little segment that we like to call 3 wishes. So Danica, you have given for a long period of time to children, parents, families, and educators through your other books, through this particular book. So we believe that it's your time to receive. Now, these wishes, they can be for yourself, for your family, for the children of the world, but you're given 3 wishes here today. And they're not just regular wishes, they are anniversary celebration sized wishes, so to speak, here as we kick off the 4-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series. So what would those 3 wishes be?
Well, if I can't ask for more wishes.
I think that the 2 disqualifiers are you can't ask for more wishes and you can't make someone fall in love with you. I think those are the 2 automatic disqualifiers.
I wish Eva were still here to see this book come out. I wish she could hold it in her hands. She passed knowing it was coming out, but I wish she were here with me talking about it to people. It would have meant a lot to her. I wish that the stuff in the Holocaust and the parallels to it would stop happening. The Holocaust is its own unique thing, but we have seen many genocides. We have seen many times of people's rights being taken away. We're seeing it now in the world. And I hope that this book can help make a difference with that the kids who read it now will grow up to be adults who will better understand propaganda and extremism and having rights taken away, and better know that kindness is better than those things. As a 3rd wish, I think I would wish that my animal companions would live really long lives, because I love dogs and cats, and 15 years isn't enough.
No.
I lost a very dear cat this past year.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that I'm an animal lover. I have 2 dogs by my feet right now and a cat sleeping in the corner. So I think
I'm actually beginning the process of looking for a dog within the next couple of weeks on mine of things. So I too am a fellow animal lover as well too. And yes, 15 years is definitely not enough. One of the things that we always close out our program with as well, we always say, raise your hand if you have had fun on this episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series. I think out of respect to the message of what we were communicating here, raise your hand if you're glad that you showed up and you tuned in, and that you helped us open up our hearts more to talk about these messages here in episode number 157 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We see many hands from the little ones on screen. We see hands from myself, as well as Danica as well. So mission accomplished, job well done. Again, this has been such a wonderful trolley step, and we encourage you to keep the conversation going post Children's Book Spotlight series as well. Again, you can purchase your copy of I Will Protect You, a true story of twins who survived Auschwitz. You can leave a 5-star review on Amazon if that is, of course, your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. That is one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Danica, to let her know that she is doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books. Of course, you can head on over to your local library as well. You can head on over to your favorite children's or independent bookstore. If they do not have their copy of I Will Protect You, you can kindly suggest that they actually stock it, because as you had mentioned, Danica, we need, as many books as possible talking about messages and events in history such as the Holocaust, because this helps our children to be able to learn, and so that certain experiences and certain energies and storylines do not continue to be replaying in the process. If this message has inspired you, if it's brought more love, compassion, healing, and forgiveness in your heart, if you feel that this message should be shared with someone in need, the message is found within I Will Protect You and the life story of Eva Mozes Kor. We encourage you, if you haven't had the opportunities to do so, to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel and share this very special trolley stop that has been episode number 157 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, the kickoff of our month-long 4-year anniversary celebration of the program. There are many more magical trolley stops to come, as we like to say here in the Children's Book Spotlight series, into the rest of the back-to-school season and holiday season. Then sooner than we know it, 2023 will be here. So if you are a children's author and you would love to be able to share your inspiring story, and in this particular episode, of course, Danica and I, we shared Eva's inspiring story and that of her twin sister as well. If you were interested in becoming a featured guest here on the Children's Book Spotlight series to share your inspiring story in the release of your brand new children's book, you can head on over to our official website, that is prfromtheheart.com, or you can connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at PR From The Heart. And also, if you're interested in learning more information about how we can be of service to you here at PR From The Heart, if you have your brand new children's book and would love to be able to facilitate a featured television interview or interviews in a city of your choosing, or a featured book media tour, or again, for more information on many of our other services, you can schedule your courtesy connection call by heading on over to our official website at prfromtheheart.com. We also don't want to forget, as part of the month of September here at PR From The Heart, the trolley is headed from San Diego all the way to Pittsburgh. We'll be spending some quality time with one of our favorite neighbors. You remember him and you love him as David Newell, the beloved Mr. McFeely on the long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We will be recording another brand new episode, possibly episodes, of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast. So stay tuned, as our September episode will be released very shortly as well too. Again, one more time, we encourage you to head on over to Amazon.com or your favorite local bookstore, children's or independent bookstore. I Will Protect You, a true story of twins who survived Auschwitz. You can leave a 5-star review, again, to be able to do your part to keep the memory and the legacy alive of Eva Mozes Kor and all children, all adults who tragically lost their lives during the Holocaust as well too. So again, we want to thank all of you as we hear the trolley. And when we hear the trolley, we know that it is time to go. So we want to thank you for your continued support of PR From The Heart and the Children's Book Spotlight series. We are so filled with so much joy in our hearts that we are celebrating this anniversary celebration. We've come very far, and again, there's still many more magical trolley stops to come. We want to thank all of you for your continued support of children's and middle grade authors such as Danica, who are very much making a difference in this particular instance, keeping the memory, the legacy, and sharing the life story of Eva Mozes Kor and her twin sister as well in the process. For your continued support of children's bookstores, independent bookstores, and local libraries, truly the pillars of our community. But above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. One last final tip of the cap to one of our favorite neighbors, Mr. Rogers. He reminded us in his own private numerology, and he always shared his favorite 3 numbers, that being 143. Somehow Mr. Rogers continuously weighed 143 pounds during his entire natural adult life. That was his way, we're communicating, of 143. That was his way of saying, I love you. 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. Well, as Danica was kind enough to give us some of her free time here this week to kick off the 4-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series, we remind all of you in our own way of our favorite 3 numbers here at the program at the Children's Book Spotlight series, that being 243. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. We are reminding you that you are perfect, that you are whole, you are healthy, you are complete, that you are loved, that you are special, just the way that you are. And even if you're going through a challenging time, to hang on to hope, to know that the worst will be behind you. And most importantly, to be able to connect with that love that's within you and to really do your part to be able to plant flowers to make the world a much better place. So again, for Danica Davidson, for myself, John Massalonis, this has been episode number 157 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We look forward to celebrating more with you throughout the month of September and beyond as we continue with the 4-year anniversary celebration of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.